Super duper. Hello, Zoya. How are you?
I'm well, Richard. How are you?
I'm fabulous. Thank you. We are here with Zoya Lehrer, and I'm super excited to talk with Zoya today. And we're going to jump right in because you've got a lot going on, like really exciting stuff, I think going on. But I'm excited to talk about Orgo, your app, your company. But before we do any of that, let's just do a quick introduction. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, Zoya?
Happily, yes. Zoya Lehrer, responsible for Orgo, as you mentioned, the company itself. We'll get into a little bit more of that journey in just a bit, but by way of
Sure.
background, I've got 20 years of digital tech experience, always within financial services, banking, insurance, SaaS. My degree is in computer science / information technology, so very much a
Yep.
self-selected, intentional path, and I've stayed
Yeah.
within that, as I mentioned, for 20 years.
Yeah, for sure.
On the personal front, I've got 3 very athletic daughters, ages 13, 9, and 6. They are my why and are very close-knitly tied
Aw.
to Orgo and its mission. So
That's
that's it.
awesome. I love it. I love it so much. And we're going to talk a lot about Orgo over the next few moments, or more than a few moments. Let's go first with kind of, specifically, Orgo addresses the needs of very active families. And, as you just mentioned in your intro about yourself, I'm sure your family is very active, right? And there's a really unique simplification process that you guys do for daily planning. It's very, very different from traditional sort of calendar apps, right? Like I'm going to put everything into my Google Calendar and then I'm going to be good. So would you just kind of talk a little bit about specifically the needs that Orgo addresses?
Yes, absolutely. And this is where the both of the worlds have started to collide for me personally.
Yeah, sure.
Problem founder fit is really strong as a result of the following. So I mentioned that corporate career within which I had enjoyed, a great set of tools and technologies that are always aimed at B2B, by the way, and we know why. It's highly profitable to be in the B2B space.
It is.
Not so much. Not always, I should say, but within that realm, there was never a question in terms of what my day entails. Really busy, long days, absolutely. But in terms of where do I go? Who do I talk to? What's next? It was all very much laid out in a way that kind of took that edge or that anxiety off of the day. And you just went off and you executed and you went from meeting to meeting and
Right.
kind of were that switchboard operator as we all are in our day.
Right.
And by direct contrast was my personal life. So aforementioned daughters, a lot of athletics comings and goings, with that type of family rhythm. And so by observation, being the technologist that I had been kind of straddling these two worlds, no such tools or such technical help did I feel were coming to my aid in terms of making my day clear or helping with the execution side of the house. A lot of planning, right? A lot of planning side applications, emails and so forth that are kind of telling you where to be and what to bring and who to bring, be there with, et cetera. But when a time comes to execute on that, because planning and executing are two different phases, the execution side was where it was like a lot of that chaos, right?
Struggle.
We're like, oh my gosh, am I going? Are you going? Who's picking up? Who's dropping off? Are we going left, right? Like it just was that and on repeat. And so as a technologist, we like repeatable processes. We like them to be programmatic, sustainable, none of those. It's like every day felt different than the last. And I'm like, it can't be this. There's got to be a better way. So what really we began to double down and I kind of started to observe personally is that what was missing for me within that personal realm, not so much what was happening inside the household. It wasn't the chore management. It wasn't the meal planning, which again are very noble challenges to solve for. And many wonderful companies are tackling that on that front. But for us, it was logistics, which is what happens when you leave the home. Right. And when you leave the home, things start to break down. Firstly, our calendar breaks down because the good old, traditional tools that we rely on today would very much have a meeting or an appointment or a game that says 2 to 3 p.m. You're like, okay, I'll hold that on my calendar until then. But what does that mean? When do I leave? How long is it going to take?
You have the commute time to get there.
Who's going? Who's leaving?
Yep.
Who's bringing? What's the stuff? Do I have to get there early? And many times you are being asked to, arrive 30 minutes.
Arrive early, right? Yeah, because as we know, on time is late.
Exactly, especially in our, kind of day and age where everything is so precise and none of us have any excuses as to why we don't know where, we have to be when. And so that really became the repeatable observation is that it's logistics. Cool. Oh, it's when we leave the house. That's the challenge. So problem founder fit, again, living that kind of challenge day to day. And that's what we really double down on is logistics.
So let's talk about some of those unique features that Orgo offers that kind of manage the chaos, right? That you're talking about. Like how fun, break it down for us. So how does it work? How does it take the chaos of scheduling multiple family members and just make that easier?
Yeah. You know what? Operative word easier, because it's not rocket science. In fact, we are repeating and mapping the way that we live our life. We're not fabricating anything that doesn't already happen. We're not looking to introduce any concepts that we don't already live by. In fact, we're just bringing technology up to par and reflecting the life that we already live. So I'll give an example.
Sure, please do.
When we take that 2 to 3 p.m. example and there's an appointment on there, we naturally conduct what we would call a T-minus calculation in our minds, right? Like you didn't think you needed to use trigonometry.
Whatever. Yeah.
But here we are. We're starting to do the math, and it's like parent math. You've seen it, right? Like adult math, parent math. We just back out of that and we start to manually computate. Is that a word? Compute. How long is it going to take? Well, in order for us to understand that, we have to take that address, we have to put it into Waze, Google Maps, what have you, and then we'll obtain that variable of distance and time. We're like, okay, cool. So now it's going to take me 45 minutes. Prior to that, we'll read that other email and we'll say, wow, okay, the coach would like us there 45 minutes earlier, or 30 minutes earlier. Or for a personal appointment, I'd like to get there maybe 10 minutes before I see the doctor.
Nothing stresses me out more than like if I have a personal appointment to a place that I've never been before.
Yeah.
So figuring out how to get there, where am I going to park, like all of that.
Parking, exactly, all of it. And then you're like, all right, well, I also have to start getting ready. In the case of the parent example, it's like I had to start yelling at my kids to get their shit together about 10 to 15 minutes earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But we're going out to dinner. I'm in a shower. I need 45 minutes to get ready. I need to zhuzh it up. Like these are all things that were already happening. On the back end of that, we still got to travel back. So really end to end, if we were to do that parent math or adult math, it's like a 3-hour endeavor for an appointment that's otherwise
or a 1-hour appointment.
For 1 hour. That's not reality. And so now this comparison starts to grow where current tools are 2D depictions, very flat. And then the world we live in is 4D, space, time, places, people, things. Like it's multidimensional. So just the mere recognition that those elements and variables exist and bringing them to a very simple user interface that starts to kind of like lay out the day and lay out those events in a very explicit, realistic manner is where we begin. It's the beginning. It's the initial value proposition surrounding which now, of course, we know there's all these additional integrations we'd like to build in, additional bells and whistles.
The integration list must be almost endless, right?
Because you can take it into so many different directions. There's so many different offshoots. But this very notion of let's begin to measure time accurately and begin to reflect it for the reality that it represents. Now we can make better decisions. Now we can recognize where are the conflicts, where are the handoffs, where can I not be in 2 places at the same time? Where can all of those additional, kind of aha moments be had? So very simple concept, but it's actually kind of hard.
So it's been complex to build. Simple in its concept, hard in its execution, right? Like most things, right? Like most things, especially in the startup world, especially in the technology startup world.
That's right.
Right? Absolutely. So we alluded to this a few seconds ago. You had an exciting milestone that you shared this morning. Orgo hit 1,000 user profiles, right? In its
profiles.
Yeah, 1,000 user profiles. Yeah, in its third week. Right? So pretty significant achievement. You talked about the startup curve and the reality of distinguishing between the different types of users, right? So we talk about user profiles here. Let's talk about a little bit about retaining those super users for you folks. And I know that you are taking all of that feedback in and it's influencing your product and your product roadmap and how you're strategically moving forward. But just elaborate a little bit for us on that, Zoya. And again, congratulations on the exciting milestone this morning.
Thank you so much. We were very excited about it until again, so maybe elaborate on this first. And so the first 3 weeks, of course, right, tons of enthusiasm, like great things to post. And we were coming out of a really tough, like dead zone, I would say, when we were heads down building for a while. Like I was kind of like, we're building in public, but like there was not a lot of updates to share at the time because all the energy is like awaiting this culminating kind of like crescendo of we have launched, and we have been on the cusp of that launch for many weeks prior. And there's been a number of kind of, different challenges that we experienced. Again, very normal, but nonetheless, that energy was just really difficult to sustain. So we finally kind of got it over this very important milestones when we launched 3 weeks ago. And then it's been great, right? Because we're like getting the word out. We're all the funds that have signed up
you're
for the wait
shouting
list.
it from the rooftops now that it's
Shouting
there.
it from the rooftops. The wait list that we've accumulated was about 400 strong. Like those guys are converting, handing out, flyers as we were, boots on the ground. All that's great. And then now you're just like, third, fourth weekend, you're like, okay, we're going to continue to do more of that. But like, okay, who's really here now? So now we're looking at actives. Now we're looking at, who are those super users? Who are the ones that are really leveraging
really like leading the charge and bending the curve on using this product?
Exactly. And not those that are like, all right, I really wanted to support you. So here I am, signed up, got it, peeked in, created 1 or 2 events. And they're like, all right, call me when you got that integration, or like, call me when you got a little bit more value to show. And yet there's others, right? Those super users who are like 98 activities deep.
Yeah, and you're like, holy fuck, they're flexing.
They're already out there. And I'm not even having to convince them as to what it is and what it isn't. They're already booked out to 2025.
Awesome.
So they're clearly seeing kind of like this early onset, and this is enough of an initial value proposition. So those are the ones that we really need to double click on. So we're going to be reaching out to those who are, again, kind of within that cohort. Those numbers are not sexy. Those KPIs are not in.
No, but that's okay, because you talk a little bit about your ideal customer profile, right? And your early adopters. And those are the people where the work really begins.
The work begins, and we need to really tap into, because everyone is so focused on what's going wrong or what's missing or what additional features to work on. But what about the thing that's going right? Because for these folks, enough of it is right in order to, demonstrate this type of a curve that is in fact, the inverse of that cliff. It's in fact steadily rising. So we're just kind of shifting our perspective and really starting to focus on learning from their experience. And I think we know what they like, but we'd like to hear from them. So, conducting those user interviews and really mining that information, and then doing a copy and paste on that, and going to go find and specifically using that terminology and learning, their language and speaking that love language in a way that can attract more of them to come. So that's when I say the work begins only on the backs of those that are kind of showing us who really needs to be leading the charge.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the fact that you continue, and you mentioned transparency at the beginning, at the top of our conversation. And I love the fact that you are talking about committing to building in public. Why, Zoya, is that so important? Why is that transparency and building in public so important to you?
It's a personal plight, and it's one that I fell into truly accidentally in a way that I didn't really think that or knew that was a thing. Remember, I'm coming out of corporate, so in many ways I didn't have a voice to assert. There was no personal brand. That's not a thing. When you kind of you're just like an extension of that brand. And surely, you would do events and conferences and panels and things, and you would represent the organizational, priorities and whatnot, and you'd echo that ever so carefully. But personal brand, personal voice, that doesn't exist. So, or for me, didn't. And so finding that firstly, and then realizing that, the thing that I'm actually talking about as I give updates week over week or observations or whatever it is, people are like, way to build in public. I'm like, is that what it is? Is that what we're doing?
Like, I'm doing.
I'm like, okay, then let's do it. So now I'm like doubling down on like, yes, we are building in public. And of course, Bootstrapper is a big part of our kind of narrative as well. And the next thing you know, those insights could be helpful, or like, that thing you shared, a couple of weeks ago, I was really kind of in a similar phase. We could be building completely different things, or probably for different
shared experience here. Yeah.
What is a shared experience? And so that has been more than anything, just keeping me mentally healthy, to be honest, because now you're building a cohort that is in the trenches alongside you, not with you per se, but alongside you in some concurrent manner, where this natural exchange occurs. And then you're kind of ideating together, or you're like holding each other up, or being like, that really sucks. Or you're jumping into offline conversations and you're going, wow, let's kind of talk a little bit about this, and just helping each other out in a way that I never would have anticipated, frankly, would have been, an outcome of the journey. But it's one of the ones that I enjoy the most.
We talk so much about, as a founder, you have to find your people, and your supporters and your village or your tribe or your posse or whatever it's called. And I love the term you use, uncut journey, right? I love that term. And Zoya, I want to definitely talk about your experiences as a female founder, obviously that's a really important part of what we do here. but in that community or in that sort of village that you're building through this sort of like, this experience, are you you're interacting with founders, I'm assuming male and female in that, right?
100%.
Yeah. Which is great, right? Because I think sometimes with some of the female founders we've talked to, they only want to talk to other female founders, right? And I think look, everybody can bring some benefit to the table there. But talk to us a little bit about what the female founder what that has meant for you personally, and where that's kind of trialed and tribulized for you. Not so much.
I don't feel a difference. I don't know. All right, let me qualify that. So I've come from financial services at a time when being a woman in tech 20 years ago was a bit of an anomaly. However, it's been normalized for me. Right. Financial services, banking, insurance, like the most kind of traditional and in that time lagging, one would argue, industries who have outwardly embraced, D&I and things that kind of are just very much a driving factor and a norm for many of these organizations. And now they're leading the charge in that regard. But back then it was kind of like, we were just kind of going about business as usual. But for me, it was a little bit different because my mom was a technologist and I'm a second generation techie by extension. Cool. So she was a computer programmer at a time when
very
that
few.
was even prior to that. So she has normalized it for me in a way where, well, of course I'm going to go do that because that is the only thing that I'm going to do. I want to be just like mom and, kind of go out and continue the work that she's begun. And for me, that's just been such a viable path because she's paved it for me. So by the time I got there, I looked around and yes, of course, it was a little bit odd because as I kept getting, more senior in my roles, I did find myself, in fact, being the only female in the room and eventually being the only female in the boardroom or on the board or, the planning board level, et cetera. And I observed that and took note of it, but it wasn't jarring. It just was like normal, which probably speaks to the issue at large, especially then. But I always kind of took that as an opportunity to be like, well, my mom brought me here and then I will then bring someone else.
Right.
So
I was just going to ask that.
Those teams. And of course, myself, I've got 3 daughters. So by extension, we're producing more and more of like that type of an influence into the world that needs so much more of it. So it was never jarring. It was never a chip. It was normal in a way that continues to be normal today, if that makes sense.
It does. Absolutely. The way in which you couch that or contextualize that, it does make sense.
Yeah, but that's just for me personally. That's not to say that doesn't exist elsewhere, but for me, this kind of continue to be the case. Now, having said that, I've always sought out large organizations that I've always been a part of, and that's been a very fortunate aspect of, my employment history is that first things first, I'd get there and I'd go, okay, where are your affinity groups? Is there a women in leadership, some sort of organization? Immediately start to join that and contribute to it. Oh, there is not. What can I do to bring something like that to the table? Personally, within my community, I've now co-chaired for many years a local kind of chapter of our, professional women's network here, within our geography and continuing to produce programming in a very offline manner. Like we don't have newsletters, we don't have podcasts that we're doing, but we are boots on the ground within the community.
You're making connections.
Serving in so many ways, whether it's student life, whether it's, professional women in various capacities. So there's always that affiliation with, but it's just not the leading identity.
I get it.
It
does make a lot of sense. And like, again, it is different for everyone, right? So I really appreciate your experiences and how it is for you.
Very personal.
And what your personal reality is, if you will, right? So that's fantastic. Let's talk a little bit about funding. So you're bootstrapping right now. You mentioned that. Do you have an ultimate goal to attract outside funding, Zoya?
Yes, this has been a very deliberate journey for us, one that we really wanted to, I can't say conclude, but certainly achieve through the bootstrapping means, which has been very challenging. We have now bootstrapped for 4 months and say that we have. It's been a year, and that's a very long time for a team of 5 or 6 folks who majority of whom are still moonlighting. They're balancing their careers, they're balancing their families, they're onshore, they're working, the same hours that we all are, but finding time in between that, life's rhythm, whether it's very early in the morning, whether it's late at night, whether it's, on the weekends, and keeping up with that momentum and sustaining that level of energy.
It's one thing to say do it for a month. It's another thing to do
for
it for
a
a year.
year.
Yeah.
For a year. So we were so close always, and then something happened. And so continuing, right? Like it's within reach. It's
taking
so
the
close.
pitfalls. Yep.
And then, kind of get there. So the milestone of launch has been even more meaningful because of some of that, kind of behind the scenes challenge that we've been experiencing. So nonetheless, that's been our journey to date, and it continues to be so. We're very proud of having brought an actual product to market by way of all the proper, steps and things along the way. We've launched our alpha previously. We've done the MVP, kind of friends and family cohort. We did the learning, we've iterated. Now we're publicly available. And of course,
you're in all the app stores, which is a whole process in and of itself, right?
Completely. I mean, I heard a metric, and I got to actually do some more research on this. This kind of speaks to my naivete in this kind of B2C space. 90% of startups, specifically B2C apps, don't make it into the app store.
Sure. I actually can believe that because they don't go through the proper certification process, right? Or or they do the initial and then they don't keep up with what you need to do to keep up with it. Yeah.
And even to gatekeep, right? Like the process that we were kind of fumbling through as first timers ourselves, kind of, going through a process, that alone can just break you and be like, you know what?
Yeah.
Time for that B2B that I thought that I was going to be holding off. Off we go. It's a lot easier over there. So but yeah, so that's not to dance around. Your question is just only to say it's been a deliberate journey to this point. I would be remiss if I were to say like that we're not thinking about a sizzle deck or a one pager or meaningful partnerships and strategic kind of infusion of funds in a way that now will allow us the runway to scale and to grow differently that we have. Yes, that's definitely a point on the horizon. But obviously our day-to-day is keeping us very busy. We have to iterate through the findings and the user interviews and continue to do the minor improvements.
Establish your measurement. You talked a little bit about KPIs already, but establish what your measurements are going to be, right? Because if at a time when you do decide to go out to the investment community, right, those are all the questions
100%
they're going to be asking you, right?
And you got to back up those metrics too. And speaking of metrics, I'll talk probably a little bit more about this at the end of the week when we do our own analysis, enough to kind of cite this empirically versus, more from like a qualitative standpoint. But there's vanity metrics, and we were led by those.
Right.
First, we were like, look at the users. Oh my God, every day. Right. And then that's when you get that drop off because the vanity metrics can only take you so long. And you can't fabricate that type of momentum. And so as soon as you realize the reason that drop off is occurring is actually quite healthy because the natural filtration system kicks in. The friends drop out, the one-time gazers, kind of pop out. And those who remain are, yes, kind of at the bottom of the barrel already. But like based upon them, you start to build. So those metrics, once again, and those KPIs are looked at differently and they tell a slightly different story. So somebody who's a seasoned investor who definitely operates within the space is going to want to look beyond the vanity ones and will want to dig in and say, okay, but what about the daily engagement? And what about those super users? And what about the curve that should actually be, inverse and showing that trajectory of going upward because they are coming back every day and they are giving you more. And so that's kind of the story that we'd like to prove and tell.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to harbor on this for too long, Zoya. But again, you were a very successful executive in FinTech. And you made the leap, right? You made the leap into the world of startup founder. And there are a lot of folks, women especially, that are on this show, or only, that make that same decision, right? Or are wrestling with that decision. And it's one of the biggest challenges of their life that they're faced with, right? And you did it. And you're a year into or a year plus into it at this point, right? So when you kind of, lay down at night or whatever, how does that all sit with you? You still feeling really confident in this decision? I mean, every day is a journey, right? Every day is an experience. Talk to me a little bit about, what it felt like to make that leap.
Sure. It's so odd to reflect back because it wasn't intentional.
Right.
There was a lot of kismet, we probably touched on this offline. when I sat down with who ultimately became a co-founder, but initially began as a trusted confidant, to whom I brought the initial concept and idea to say, look, I'm kind of grappling with this concept. Does it have technical legs? Again, it's just two technologists sitting there and just kicking around this idea. And then coming out of that conversation, it became just so by way of kismet that both had become so, compelled by the problem statement and then excited by the solution. And then next thing you know, it kind of started to flow into more of the how instead of the what. All of that was kind of an outcome of that initial conversation. But guess what? Taking that initial step and just scheduling that discussion, or taking that making that micro decision to say, I should externalize these thoughts. I should share that with somebody. That's the moment that I look back upon the most, because had I not, had I maybe internalized them in some way that would have poo-pooed them, or just would have said, oh, that's not viable, or that's not a thing, or that's not worthy. That's probably the only piece of advice that I have, is both to just show up, whether it's in a physical room or in a proverbial space, but also to just take that micro step, because it will snowball. One will beget the next. The next will present itself. The following will become more apparent. And you cannot have a year's worth of journey to foresee before you in such a clear way as now reflecting back upon, in hindsight. But taking that baby step one by one is probably the most that anybody can do. But just open yourself up to the possibility and the action of it.
I like what you just said about opening yourself up to the possibility, right? And having enough faith in yourself and everyone else to just say, I'm going to just open the idea of this and see how it feels and see where it falls, right? Yeah. So
just talk to somebody. I mean, that's all that anybody's doing, in any way. Just in this case, like, talk about your idea. And by the way, like, the 20 years of that skill set, that's a 20-year accelerator. Like,
absolutely.
Not to like downplay, I'm a first-time founder. I'm a very different first-time founder.
No, absolutely.
20 years in, experience versus somebody who, maybe coming out of like grad school or even, undergrad, and being like, this is my life's passion. And I'm willing to fail 5 times over before I get the real thing. I don't want to fail. I got 20 years. I'm surrounding myself with people who are knowledgeable, who are peers, and who've done, this.
Been there, done that. Yeah, absolutely.
Been there, done that. And I got a family support too. So like, I don't have the same level of tolerance for failure per se. There's a lot more on the line, but there's also that experience that, kind of leads you through some of those trials and tribulations differently.
I feel this. I mean, I have, like you, 20 plus years of experience in the corporate world, and with the companies that I advise and mentor, I just want them to learn from that experience, to your point, right? And give them that perspective. I'm going to give you a scenario. So we're somewhere, I don't know where, and I elbow somebody and I say, do you know who that is over there? And they say, who? And I say, that's Zoya Lehrer. She's the creator of Orgo. And that person runs up to you and says, what would make you, what would be the best thing that you could hear from that person if they were to come up to you and say something?
Thank you so much. What a great question. You should have dialed in. I love it. I would love for them to say, thank you for just helping me be less stressed in life.
Yeah. And simple, right? Just making my stress level go down a little bit.
Just go down. And it's highly personalized, as, whatever that means for them. We talk about the family use case a lot.
Yeah.
Worst kept secret. That's probably not where we'll end up solely, right?
Sure,
I mean, where we start is not always where
I can see so many use cases you could tackle. Yeah.
So many different use cases, but whatever that use case is to them, however they may have experienced at that point of the journey with Orgo at that point. But if that just brought like less stress into their life and assuaged their life's experience in some meaningful way, that would be amazing, because that's the outcome. It's not the thing. It's not the widget. It's not even the app itself, but it's whatever greater impact is. And right now we're just so overwhelmed and stressed with so much of what we've got. We've got like a sandwich generation. We've got elderly care. We've got our own families to contend with, jobs, interests. We're all trying to kind of be these well-rounded beings and whatnot. So just one less. That's all that would be so good to hear.
Just say it's one less thing I have to worry about. right? Absolutely. That would be amazing.
Oh my God. I did this funny thing. I mean, I think it's funny. Cause like I'm on TikTok now. I don't know who I am or like why we're there, but I feel that this is part of the journey.
We just joined as well. The podcast just joined as well, like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So we can follow each other. It'll be exciting.
Wild, Wild West.
Yeah,
I'll see you over there. We'll do all sorts of weird things. But one of the videos that I did was I was like, I had a turtleneck on it. It was a black turtleneck, and I got it on Amazon. And for whatever reason, because remember when we just first got on, we were like, oh, you know, like
we're matched,
with the black tops. Yeah. So it's a black turtleneck. I was like, major Elizabeth Holmes vibe, minus the jail time. And I'm like, fun fact about this turtleneck: it doesn't have a tag. Not in the front, not in the back, on the side. So it's one less decision that I have to make. One less. That's the whole point.
Well, what's that statistic, Zoya, about how many decisions we make a day? Like I can't remember the number. It's an astronomical number.
It's like death by a million decisions a day.
Right. And then it breaks your brain when you sit down and you maybe think about it for 5 seconds, right? About like how many decisions you make and
micro that just parlay, right? And it's never the thing. It's like, it's never, oh my God, you know, what are you most stressed out about? Sometimes like you can't even pinpoint it because it's the culmination of all of those micro moments that all of a sudden you're like, that's it. That's the breaking point.
People used to sometimes ask me why I wanted to work in startups, and I would crazily say it's because I get to make a lot of decisions every day. Where if I worked in sort of the, you know, steady as she goes large corporate company, I might not make a decision for a month because of the analysis.
Well, you'll be talking a lot about it.
Talking about it in committees and subcommittees and things. So, but that's not for everybody, right? So, you know, it's not at war for everybody. You said, you know, worst kept secret, and you talked a little bit about some of the other use cases. You know, maybe not so much too far down the line, Zoya, but you know, sort of where are the kind of more immediate expansions in your pipeline that have got you guys really excited?
We're so excited. Honestly, in 3 weeks in, that's probably the most exciting, encouraging factor that we're kind of really tethering ourselves to. And that is we've had some inbound interest.
Interesting.
Completely outside of the family use case. There's a few companies that have stepped forward and they said, yeah, family's got it. What I'm hearing from you, though, is the word logistics, which is actually quite meaningful to us. And we're like, talk to us. Like, we've got the honeypot out. We're like, yep, come on in, come on in.
Yeah, the bigger word,
But like, you tell us how you interpret it. Like, how do you think about it? And so caregivers, as a caregiver economy, it's a highly mobile workforce.
Absolutely.
It is very much bound by the gig economy, right? You've got a number of agencies. They're deploying a number of workers kind of in the field. And they're extremely time-based, and time is money. If somebody is late by 15 minutes out of the hour's worth of employment,
it's so bad. Yeah.
Detrimental financially, as well as the care itself, right? The quality of the care and the patient side of it suffers, et cetera. And so that has astronomical like impact financially. So we're only starting to learn about those use cases again, inbound, and those potential partnerships are still as an extension of, yes, it's a family construct, but then like who else is in that ecosystem? Oh, it's the elderly care. Oh, it's the patient, you know, kind of caregiver economy. So we're not like pivoting entirely where we're like, well, we started here, but like, whoa, that shiny object. We're within the geography still.
The difference between shiny object syndrome and being open to other opportunities.
Right. Absolutely. But like, where else is that a thing, you know, for other, you know, kind of B2B scenarios and so forth. So that's definitely one. The other one that I'm personally really excited about, it's another problem founder fit, but from a different chapter of my life, is the student life. So students in multi-campus constructs, which Rutgers University is and was, you know, certainly from the time. I lived on one campus, all of my courses with, you know, computer science and everything else were elsewhere. So the mere computation that we as students had to make of trying to make our schedules work and really factoring, you know, the bus times in between or the construction on whatever route and whatever. And then of course, you know, student life, whether it's your student athlete, you've got your practices, you've got your meals, you've got your homework, whatever else. It just is a very busy, logistically led lifestyle.
Absolutely.
For someone that age is a lot of responsibility to tackle and fully kind of own. And so I think it's another opportunity for us to come in and say, look, let's just kind of lay out the day, and once again, reflecting the reality that already is, and allow you to see the day for what it truly is, such that you can make informed decisions about what you can and cannot do, slot your extracurriculars or whatever else you kind of want to round out your student life with. Like that, I'm very impassioned by. Commuter colleges, commuter campuses that perhaps have more of a contingency around, the first generation immigrant, like I am a first generation immigrant, person, period, but student, here, within the US itself too. So there's a lot of precedents that those families may not have inside the household in terms of like, oh, here's what I used to do that really worked for me back when I was in college. Like you're the first
There's no relatable experience there.
There isn't, but let's give them more tools and give more of an assurance and a confidence to work through that day. Maybe they've got jobs too. Like I always used to have a job, and balancing out kind of those responsibilities. Anyway, really passionate about the student life. We'll pursue that outbound.
Fabulous.
But the inbound interest that we're receiving, we're very, very interested in.
That's exciting. Well, I'll give you a single point of validation there, Zoya, right? So so beware, because it's a single point of validation. But no, but I personally I'm very involved with the University of Massachusetts Lowell here. Lowell, it is spread across 3 campuses, to your point, right? The average UMass Lowell student works 27 hours a week in addition to a full class load, right? And I don't know the percentage, so I don't want to give one, but a significant percentage of students are first generation college students. And some are of immigrant status as well, right? So there's non-immigrant first generation and there's immigrant first generation, right? So you take all those pieces, to your point of multi-campus, working 27 hours a week, carrying 4 classes, first generation college student who doesn't have some of those benefit of experience of mom, dad, brother, sister, whoever, right? So I'll give you a single point of validation right there that
and you got to live it to know it.
Manage all of that is crazy, right?
And they're 18, 19 years old.
And they're not even 20 years old. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's
what's just to kind of triple back on that, just watching my own 13-year-old and, growing up in this digital first era, which she is. The executive management skills are not taught anywhere. This is something that we're just assumed to kind of amass as we go through life. And so this notion of time management and understanding how to like move through space and time and like, where can I do this and where can I do that? That's not a skill set that naturally develops. So it's almost like you have to count on someone's natural inclination from a personality standpoint to just do it the right way. And yet they invite tools into their life in a way that you and I have only kind of grown to over time. So anyway, I think there's a psychological plug-in here, and there's definitely a technical opportunity. So I'm very, very impassioned by that. And you and I will talk offline
about that.
That opportunity as well.
You mentioned psychology for a second, and I am curious. I'm sure others will be as well, Zoya. So you're clearly busy and committed. When your bucket gets empty, what's your way to refill that, Zoya? How do you do it?
Bucket is empty.
Yeah.
When's it been empty? So busy. No, there's definitely times.
Yeah, there are. Yeah. Yeah. So what's your self-care? Like how do you recharge when you need to recharge? What's your advice to those founders and entrepreneurs when they need to recharge?
Conversations as these. Founder to founder conversations are really, they seem like wasteful, right? I mean, you got to have a proper balance because everyone's like maniacal about monetization. Got it. But in those moments, and I do try to kind of pepper them throughout the week in a way that is a refresher as opposed to a distraction.
Yeah.
It's just nice to kind of talk to someone who's also, once again, in those trenches with you
and
revitalize
each
other's moments. And of course, from a physicality perspective, I look at the beautiful day that's outside today. I'm sure you're sharing in a similar beautiful day as well. And I kind of get like down and out of like, oh, here I am once again, just like the day goes by.
Racking away.
Plugging away, going for a walk, opening up a window, working out, just like including the physicality into the mental kind of component. I think just us as humans, that's our natural.
Do I need to walk? Do I need a drink of water? Do I need
water?
Do I need a bathroom break?
It's not rocket science, but you do need that reminder for sure.
Absolutely. Awesome. Zoya, thank you. The app is called Orgo. The website is orgohq.com. We're going to link all that up in our stuff.
And come see me on TikTok and Instagram.
And we'll come see you on TikTok.
A bunch of shenanigans are happening over there.
And we wish you the best of luck. Can't wait to follow you more. See your Orgo app grow from 1,000 to 1,000,000 to whatever number you want it to grow to. So best of luck to you, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Richard. So thoughtful.
We'll
Appreciate
see
the
you
time.
soon. Bye.
All right. Talk then.